What's up, sports bettors? I got 3 player props on Underdog Fantasy, and this is a platform we've been pretty hot on. So it looks like we've cashed 3 of our last 6 entries on Underdog Fantasy. And a lot of people will say, oh, I already used Prize Picks. Why should I sign up for Underdog Fantasy? And there's one main reason, right? So for these 3 pick entries, on Prize Picks, you're always getting a 5x payout, right? They're both fixed payout platforms. Doesn't matter if you take overs, unders. It doesn't even matter what 3 picks you select on Prize Picks. You're always getting a 5x payout. So what's different is on Underdog Fantasy, for these 3 pick entries, you're getting a higher payout. You're getting a 6x payout. So as a sharp bettor, 5x payout versus 6x payout, it makes a really big difference long term. You're also going to notice Underdog Fantasy, they're running a promo on Jaylen Brown, right? So Underdog Fantasy, just like Prize Picks has Taco Tuesday, Prize Picks will have promos. It's no different on Underdog Fantasy, right? They have Jaylen Brown's points line all the way down at 0.5 points, which is obviously going to cash. If Jaylen Brown even scores 1 bucket in game 3 against the 76ers, this is going to win. So obviously this is a player prop you'd want to go with. But long story short, we know on Underdog Fantasy, we're getting a payout of 6x for 3 pick entries. So you can kind of back out what percentage of your picks do you have to win to be profitable on Underdog. So you just have to think about it from Underdog Fantasy's perspective. Most of the customers betting on Underdog are recreational sports bettors. They don't have an edge. So they can kind of only select these over-unders correctly. If you're betting with your gut, you're only going to be able to get these correctly 50% of the time, right? Underdog Fantasy assumes you have no advantage. And you can think about it, if you have no advantage, you're only going to be able to select these over-unders correctly 50% of the time. So if you're hitting 50% of your player props on Underdog, like most recreational bettors, you're going to lose 25% of your money long term. So you need to find player props that are winning over 55% of the time. So if you can win, let's say 56% of your player props, only lose 44%. So if you can get these over-unders correctly 56% of the time, your ROI on Underdog is going to be 5.4%. So pretty high ROI, right? So you're just looking, when you think about these fixed payout platforms, so not just Underdog, but also Prize Picks, right? All you're trying to do is find picks that are winning at the highest possible rate. So the tool I typically start out using is right here. It's called the Odds Jam Positive Expected Value Positive EV tool. And kind of what this tool does is it just reads in, all these lines from Prize Picks to Underdog. There's no BS. All it does is it points out value in the market. So as an example, you're going to see the top play. It's not on Underdog. It's on Fliff, right? So I explained before, Underdog Fantasy has, a bunch of promos like Jaylen Brown over under half of a point. They also have better payouts than Prize Picks for these 3-pick entries. So there's a benefit to having both Prize Picks and Underdog. Well, there's also a benefit to having Fliff, right? You never know which sportsbook is going to screw up and offer value on a given day. And you can see right here, pool over 3.5 assists is plus 130 on Fliff. Bet Online, so you can see Bet Online is a pretty sharp sports book. They're known to be pretty sophisticated. They're all the way down at minus 105, and the average line on pool over under 3.5 assists, the average line on his over is plus 112. So you're getting great value on Fliff. So this is a bet you want to go with if you have access to Fliff. Pool over 3.5 assists. But anyways, let's get on to Underdog Fantasy. So we know that Underdog Fantasy is a kind of unique platform because they don't change your payouts based on you selecting over or under, right? It doesn't matter what 3 picks you select. If you want to change this to a golf pick right here, right, you're still getting a 6x payout. Doesn't matter what 3 picks you select, you're always getting a 6x payout. And all you got to do to be profitable on Underdog is win over 55.1% of your picks. So essentially what Odds Jam does and what all sharp sports bettors do is they look at sportsbook odds, right? So you're going to see, for example, for Dante DiVincenzo, all the sports books have his under, right? His under 4.5 points as the heavily favored outcome. Pinnacle, sharpest sports book in the world, they have his under all the way down at minus 171. Sleeper, minus 145. TonyBet, minus 141. So I say this in other videos, but it's because it's so important to understand. Like if you actually want to make money sports betting, I've profited here. Underdog Fantasy, for some reason, I seem to run much hotter on this platform than Prize Picks. I seem to win a lot more of my bets. But Underdog Fantasy is a platform that I've been able to make, over $70,000 off of, and it's all just with finding player props that are winning over 55.1% of the time. So I know some people will be like, aren't there any other strategies for beating Underdog Fantasy? And the answer, truthfully, is no. Every 3-pick entry is a 6x payout. So if you want to beat Underdog, there's no silver bullet or golden bullet, whatever the phrase is, for making $1 million, right? That's not how it works. It's all just about consistently, ruthlessly looking for player props that are winning over 55.1% of the time. That's all I do, and that's how I've made almost $100,000 betting on Underdog Fantasy, right? So follow the data, find player props winning over 55.1% of the time, and not betting with my gut. So you're going to see here, DiVincenzo, when you're using OddsJam, you just want to place the bet in bold and in green. And what you're going to see is all the sportsbooks, right? These are all data points. They're all telling us the same thing. Yo, DiVincenzo is a lot more likely to go under as opposed to over. That's what the sportsbooks are telling you through their odds, right? So it's just like, if we go to the Lakers game tonight, just kind of as an example. So if we pull up the Lakers game, so we'll let that load very quickly, and then we can zoom back in here. So all the sportsbooks have DiVincenzo's under, pretty heavily favored. Pinnacle, the sharpest sportsbook in the world, they have his under all the way down at minus 171. They have his under as a heavily favored outcome. So this is how sportsbooks work, right? You can see the Suns are favored against the Nuggets. The Suns, according to the betting market, the Suns are more likely to win. And every sportsbook is telling you that. The Warriors are more likely to win the game tonight, right? They're the favored team, and it's no different here. DiVincenzo's more likely to go under as opposed to over. And all of the data, all of the sportsbooks posting odds are data points telling you, yo, DiVincenzo's more likely to go under as opposed to over. So this is a great player prop bet to go with for tonight on Underdog Fantasy. So that's the first tool I use to kind of find value on Underdog as well as sportsbooks. Right, so you can see there's value on Fliff, there's value on FanDuel. Sometimes there's more bets on Underdog, sometimes there's more bets on Prize Picks, sometimes there's more bets on Caesars. So as a sharp bettor, it's really important that you have as many sportsbook accounts as possible. More books means more profitable betting opportunities. But long story short, let's get to my other picks. So my second pick, and a tool I use to find value on Underdog, and you're going to see there's some overlap with the positive EV tool, but it's called the fantasy screen. So what this tool does is it just actually quantifies what is the probability your bet wins. So DiVincenzo under 4.5 points is 57.4% to win, according to the sportsbooks, right? FanDuel has this under at minus 150. FanDuel has the under heavily favored. BetMGM has the under favored. Pinnacle has the under favored. So all these sportsbooks, right, they all set lines independently. So they all have slightly different models. Sportsbooks, just like the price of a stock goes up due to supply and demand, same with sports betting. Right? If all the action's coming in on the under, sportsbooks will move his under. If everyone keeps hammering DiVincenzo under 4.5 points, FanDuel will move this from minus 150 to minus 160 to reflect, right? To reflect the fact that more action is coming in on his under until they reach that point where there's balanced, amount of bets coming in on both sides. That's exactly what sportsbooks want. If there's equal and opposite bets coming in, an equal amount of action, a balanced amount of action on DiVincenzo's over and his under, then the sportsbooks will just make their vig, right? They'll make their spread. That's how sportsbooks make money. They charge a spread, minus 110, minus 110. So anyways, a lot of words, but long story short, what this tool does is it just actually quantifies what is the probability that your bet wins according to sportsbook odds, right? So we know on Underdog, to be profitable, how I've made literally about $100,000 betting on Underdog Fantasy is just finding player props that are winning over 55.1% of the time. So what the fantasy screen does is it reads in all these odds from sportsbooks, and it tells you the win probability for your bet, right? And it's sometimes confusing to new sports bettors, like, how are you getting from odds to percentage chance to win? But what you need to remember is, sportsbooks, they tell you win probabilities through their bets or through their odds. I apologize, getting tripped up over my words. But if I go to the NBA tomorrow, for example, hopefully this example makes sense. So let me zoom back in on the fantasy screen. But the Lakers tonight are underdogs, right? They're plus 245 to win. The 76ers are underdogs tomorrow as well, but they're only slight underdogs, plus 116, right? Whereas the Lakers are plus 245. So what this means is the Lakers are bigger underdogs than the 76ers. They're both underdogs, but obviously the Lakers are bigger underdogs, right? So sportsbooks, they tell you win probabilities through their odds. If a team is minus 200 to win, literally what minus 200 means is a 2-1 favorite. 2/3 to win, 66.67% to win. So it's the same thing here for player props. All the sports books have DiVincenzo's under favored, so the under is going to be above 50% to win, but there's a spectrum, right? Minus 200 means 66.67, a 2-1 favorite, 2/3 to win, minus 200. That's what minus 200 means. But long story short, there's a spectrum, right? And the sportsbooks don't have DiVincenzo's under 4.5 points at minus 200, but they kind of have it around minus 150, right? So DiVincenzo's under, long story short, according to the sportsbook odds, and again, the sportsbook odds, this is what the market currently believes is the true price, right? So a lot of people will be like, oh, so if I just hit refresh here, kind of as an example, so you can see another bet for tonight is Looney over 13.5 rebounds, minus 120. So all the other sportsbooks are saying, no, minus 120 is too much value. This player prop, right, has a higher hit rate that makes betting on Looney's over at minus 120 profitable. So if you kind of just look at the odds, a lot of people are like, I don't really care about the math. But what you're going to see is all the sportsbooks are essentially telling you, hey, minus 120 is a great price. And that's because Looney's over should be a lot more favored. So long story short, what I ended up going with, I got these two picks from the fantasy screen. DiVincenzo under 4.5 points, Harden over 7.5 assists. All the sports books have Harden's over in the 76ers game. All the books have his over heavily favored. His over is more likely to win. So this is a sharp player prop bet to go with. So those are my first two picks. The fantasy screen just shows you player props that are winning over 55.1% of the time. So a lot of people will be like, well, why should I believe sportsbook odds? Right? How do I know the Lakers aren't going to win tonight? And I mean, of course the Lakers could win tonight. This is an NBA game. But what you have to remember is, for example, let's say you thought the Lakers were 50% to win. If you thought the Lakers were 50% to win, then you would be hammering their money line at, plus 200, plus 245. You're betting 100 to win 200 in profit. So if you truly believed the Lakers were 50% to win, you would be putting a lot of money on the Lakers at plus 245, right? You're betting 100 to win $200, even if you just get the Lakers at plus 200. So obviously, if you think the Lakers are 50% to win, then you'd be hammering the Lakers, right? So that's essentially how sportsbook odds move, right? Let's say all the sharp bettors are like, yo, we actually think the Lakers are 50% to win. Every sharp bettor will start hammering Lakers money line at plus 235, plus 230, and the odds will drop. Sportsbooks will be like, wow, all the action's been coming in on the Lakers, so we're going to move down our line until you reach that point of consensus, right? When there's equal action coming in, a balanced amount of action coming in on both teams, that's when sportsbooks stop moving odds. Just like the price of a stock is based on supply and demand. So long story short, the reflection, sportsbook odds are a reflection of what all sports bettors, the sports betting market, believes. So there's tens of millions of people who bet on the NBA, and they all believe that the Lakers should be, around plus 250 and the Warriors should be around minus 250 favorites, right? Otherwise, they would have hammered the bets and the lines would have moved. So long story short, let's just kind of get into my picks on Underdog Fantasy. 3 plays. I have Harden over 7.5 assists. I have Nosen over 1.5 shots on goal and DiVincenzo under 4.5 points. As always, just following the data, looking for value, and hopefully you found this video helpful. Let's make some money.